And of course, we know that there is no success without succession. That is what they normally say. And we can talk to leadership expert here to tell us much more about leadership and harnessing potential of future leaders. A very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us on AM Live.
Thank you for having me.
Right. What is leadership?
Okay. There are so many different conceptions of leadership.
Yes.
But in my experience, leadership really boils down to creating the space in which people can perform naturally to produce the results that A, they're required to produce,
Yes.
and they want to produce. And the leader's role is to ensure that every single element is aligned for the people to perform. And they do that through only just 4 things. First is they ask questions. Second is they speak, they deliver a message. Third is listen. And fourth is acknowledge and appreciate. And focusing on each of these 4 areas increases the capacity and the capability of the leader to enable the followers. So the leader's job is to inspire other people to produce results through other people.
But how do you get to make leaders and train leaders to develop listening skills?
It's listening is one of the most fundamental skills for a leader to be able to inspire the people that they're leading. And if you really look at all the education processes that all of us go through, doesn't matter what stream we are engaged in, there doesn't seem to be any training on listening. And it turns out that there are a few filters that are active for everybody. And if you just pay attention to those filters, focus on them on a daily basis, those filters start reducing the grip that they have. So the first filter is what is called, I already know what you're going to be saying, and it's always the same. So you start speaking, and halfway through that sentence, I already get a sense of what you're saying. And the moment I get that, I moved away now from listening to what I believe is what you're speaking. That's the first filter. The second filter is the filter of the junior or senior act. Now, with every person that you interact, you know whether you're the junior or you're the senior. And there's that act that immediately takes over. And the moment that act takes over, you've gone away from listening. The third is being an expert. So if you are, consumed by your expertise, and somebody is speaking, and the level at which they are speaking, and the level at which you understand that subject, that gap is there. So you get sort of positioned into that pedestal, and that costs the quality. And listening begins at an equality. It's a peer. You cannot listen from standing on a pedestal. You got to be on the same platform as a peer-to-peer. And then there are some other filters just like this. And the more you work with these filters, the more freedom one gets to be present in the present and listen. And when you listen, you begin to get clues on what needs to happen to make things work.
Right, let's talk about the elements that we are looking in a leader, the traits. Yeah, broadly, we've mentioned just listening skills and how you can develop your listening skills. Yeah, doing away with the filters. What are some of the overarching elements that you think a good leader should be having?
First of all, the ability to discover what is present in the present. So there is a word that everybody is so very excited about, and that word is invention.
Invention.
Yeah, and everybody wants to be creative, and they want to invent a new possibility, a new reality. But invention is something that is not in existence. It's something that you're creating in the future. Whereas leadership is about discovering what's present in the present and find a way to deal with that. And the next step after that is innovation. So leadership is a combination of discovering what's present in the present and then innovate to put those things together to make things work, and enabling the people to do that.
How key is you as a leader having an insight, yeah, and foresight of where your company should go and how you can shift that paradigm that will be a game changer in the industry that you're involved in?
See, one of the things that happens with every leader is that, when they start working in a particular role,
Yes.
they start getting into patterns. And some of those patterns start to succeed. And those patterns then pretty much start defining how they approach their job or the key result areas that they need to produce for themselves and the shareholders. Now, that is inside a certain paradigm. A paradigm is a space. A paradigm is like a room, or a paradigm is like a lens. And unless a leader is examining the boundaries of that paradigm, they get pretty much stuck, and then the results start becoming very incremental. So the CEO's job or the leader's job is to keep examining the paradigms in which the organization is operating. The world is very dynamic. And with the new information that's available everywhere at the touch of a button, the sources of very long-term competitive advantage, they are gone. So it's all about transient competitive advantage. And transient competitive advantage requires a leader to be extremely nimble, to find the edge of the paradigm that they're operating in and get that flexibility to be able to step out. And that requires quiet time. It requires meditation. It requires being able to work on the business rather than being stuck working in the business.
And do you think, from your own estimate, that our leaders around the world or of the big companies as well, do they really have this quiet time? That they have a non-negotiable slot for meditation and thinking forward of how they're going to take this company. You see them, most of them, being involved in flurry of activities.
Well, yeah, the thing is, you're absolutely right. There is this thing called, whirlwind, and everybody seems to be caught up being busy in their day-to-day activities. So the leaders, who are clear that they need to find that quiet time, usually engage with a coach or they engage with a mentor. And in that relationship, it's a very sacred relationship. In that relationship, that quiet time and that meditative time is default. It's something that immediately comes through. And that comes through by the questions that the coach or the mentor is asking and the quiet space that the coach or mentor provides for the leader to articulate things that are deep within, but nobody seems to provide that space of listening for them to hear themselves. And it's only when they start hearing themselves at that depth that they start accessing new paradigms.
Right. How do you get to effect change? Because you have a new paradigm and you think this company needs to go this direction, but there's change resistance.
Yes, there's resistance to change, and that resistance largely comes from a leader trying to convince his people or trying to order them into move in a particular direction. Now, people are working in an organization and they bring along with themselves their whole being, their mind, their thought patterns, and everything, and they really need to be enrolled. And this whole process of enrollment produces that engagement. And that enrollment really comes from when they see the possibility. So it's about sharing the vision and inspiring people to step into that vision. And we do that by generating a series of answers to one fundamental question is, what will this do for us? What will this do for you? And you keep asking that question, you keep asking that question, slowly, you start rising into a level where everybody seems to connect. And in that connection, that yes, if we make this change, for example, it's an ERP that you want to implement in an organization, there's a lot of resistance to do something like that. What will that do for us? So what that will do for us is it will systematize everything. You won't have to, worry about things that you entered in different parts of the organization, for example, in the inventory system or the sales system and so on. And what that will do for us is it's going to give us accurate information, timely information, so that you can take quality decisions. And what that's going to do for us is it's going to help us produce more, serve our customers better, and gain more peace of mind. What that's going to do for us is we're going to make more money. What that's going to do for us, we can share that money with everybody. So, when you start kind of opening that up, somewhere people will find a space, a landing place where they can get enrolled into the change that you're proposing.
How do you then, you as a leader, come up with a winning strategy for your particular company? And what really informs a winning strategy?
See, the problem with strategy is that there are so many different approaches to strategy.
Yes.
And most leaders, they bring what they have read recently or the seminar that they've attended recently, and that's the framework that they approach with. Sometimes leaders create a strategy sitting in a room and they're thinking of so many things, but fundamentally, if you boil down strategy, it's just three questions. Question number one is, where are we today? Question number two is, where do we want to go? And question number three is, how will we get there? Now, these three questions, if they are properly articulated, and we can share that with the people, where they can see that, yes, where we are today, we are all in agreement with that. Where we want to go, yes, sounds feasible. How will we get there? We can see the steps. Once that comes into existence, execution of the strategy becomes so much easier. The problem with strategy and execution is the mismatches along the way is where we are today is not defined. So if you ask people about strategy, and you ask them these three questions, how much time do you spend on where we are today? How much time do you spend on where you want to go? And how much time you spend on articulating how will you get there? It's shocking. They spend a lot of time figuring out where they want to go, which is in the future. They spend very little time on articulating where they are today. So what do you mean where we are today? We are in Nairobi, we're here, we are in this place. Where we are today, you need to spend about 70% of your time to discover these different elements. And then from there, you start building maybe 20% of your time where you want to go, and the balance on exactly the steps on how you get there. Once you do that, that strategy is an implementable strategy. And people can see the whole progression. And that makes it easy for them to execute on the strategy and help the leader implement what they want to do.
All right. But how do you then try and measure your successes, vis-a-vis your strategy? What are the key components that you look at?
The fundamental answer to your question is in your question itself. And your question really is about how do you measure. Now, if you look at most organizations, they have some measurements and some metrics in place. So there are two things that I'm going to say here. So the first thing that is in terms of what kind of measures are they working with. So they have something which are called lagging indicators. Now, lagging indicators are things that, come into existence, or you can measure them after the event is over. For example, a balance sheet. A balance sheet you can only bring into existence after the period is over. You cannot create a balance sheet on 31st December 2014 earlier than 1st January 2015. So it's lagging the period. Now, that's like saying that you're driving an organization like a car looking at your rear view mirrors. It's just much smarter to look through the windscreen and look at the road that's coming at you, and that's by moving or shifting the focus on leading indicators. So the one is about lagging indicators and leading indicators and focusing on leading indicators. So all goals need to be set on lagging indicators, and all the monitoring needs to happen on leading indicators.
Yes.
That's number one. Number two is to inculcate a regime of measurements. Now, when you look at measuring and quantifying, the difference between the two is measuring, you can use any instrument, maybe a scale, a pressure gauge, weighing scale, and so on and so forth. But there are so many things which you cannot measure by scale. For example, customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and so on and so forth. So there you quantify that on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 to 100, or whatever the case is. And as you start quantifying everything, you suddenly now moved into a realm of measurements. And when you start putting those measurements into play in your strategy, where we are today in terms of measuring all the elements, where we want to go, what are the figures going to look like, how will we get there, what's the progression, then you have a whole series of measurements that you can track your performance on. And that's a question of inculcating that discipline in the organization.
How important is feedback communication, a seamless flowing communication in an institution for the progress of that particular institution?
See, the thing about feedback is that there are fundamentally two elements in it. The first element of feedback is to take stock. And the second element of feedback is, where do I lay the blame? So a leader that is coming from a place called let's take stock so that we can learn from what happened in the past, because you know and I know we can't do anything about what happened yesterday or day before yesterday. It's already happened, it's gone. What we can do is we can take stock and learn from it. As opposed to that, if a leader looks at what happened and there's a gap, and then he comes down like a ton of bricks and creates an environment of blame and shame, then that's going to debilitate the person to take action going forward. So taking stock, feedback which is about taking stock, and then feed forward, which is from taking the stock, what behavior needs to come into existence for us to create the result we want to create, that begins to energize people. So the bottom line from a leader is that if you are talking about giving feedback or feed forward, manage the energy level of the person that you're working with. If that's increasing the energy level, you've done a fantastic job. If it's debilitating that, then don't congratulate yourself on giving feedback, because you haven't given feedback. What you've done is you put the person down. And by putting a person down, they've lost energy. They don't have energy now to engage going forward. That's not a good strategy.
All right. Tell us why in the country right now there's a training opportunity that, that has afforded you also this time to be in the country. Is that true?
Yes. I'm basically, working with business owners and CEOs in a 12-month program. It's called the CEO's Business Growth Program.
Yes.
And this program, the leadership capabilities of these business owners gets transformed from where they are operating at the level at which they are operating to operating at world-class Fortune 500 CEO level. And what that does basically is allows them to grow their organizations with a lot less effort and struggle. And this is what I'm doing here. And the people that are engaged in this have automatically started producing results. And what we want to achieve is between 500 to 1,000% return on their investment of their time, effort, money into the program. And we are tracking that, and that's what I've been doing in different parts of the world. I operate in Dubai, Lagos, and now in Nairobi for the last 5 months.
So where is the training taking place at?
We operate out of hotel conference rooms.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Rajesh Nagjee, I really do appreciate you coming.
Thank you
this
very
morning.
much.
You tell us more about leadership. I appreciate your insight. I think we're really strapped for time. We should have gotten more to discuss about leadership, especially at this time when we are looking at the Jubilee government that has been in leadership for the last 1 year. Many thanks indeed.
Thank you very much.
All right. I've speaking to Rajesh Nagjee, the founder and CEO of Business Growth Program. Of course, he's in the country to carry out some training on leadership training and also on how you can develop your business as well. Right, and we've been taking stock of the Jubilee government vis-a-vis good leadership. How does it go with the good leadership? Of course, they say leadership is not opposition, right? Leadership is action. Thank you for your valued company. Don't go away. Much more is coming up on the other side of a break.